All right, it looks like everyone's getting back into the main session. We're going to do a couple polls so that everyone kind of has an idea of who else is in the room aside from who we just had breakout rooms with. And hopefully it'll help Van kind of guide her presentation to the people that are in this room. So first of all, we're going to find out what your involvement is with the CCIM Institute and the chapter. So we'll launch the poll now. If you could fill it out, we'll get a little bit of insight into everybody, and then we'll go ahead and launch one other quick one more specifically into your type of business. So this first poll says, what is your involvement with CCIM? Are you a designee, a candidate, a future candidate, or have you potentially stumbled into this room and never heard of CCIM before? All right, so it looks like the majority of us are CCIM designees. We don't have any candidates. We have a couple people that will hopefully become candidates soon in the future. And nobody's never heard of it, which is a good idea, which is a good thing. So one more poll, which will give Van a little bit of insight into everyone's industry and help her kind of guide the presentation in that direction. So let everyone know what kind of industry you're in. If you're a commercial agent, if you're in the residential side of things, if you're a property manager, if you're in construction, insurance, or potentially something else altogether.
Justin, real quick, for some reason, I can't enter my answer for the poll.
I think because you're a presenter, it won't let us, but I think everyone here could guess that you're in insurance.
Okay, so I guess I don't have to answer this question then.
Yeah, it's okay. So we'll give everyone a few more seconds and then we'll wrap this up. But it looks like primarily commercial brokers and property managers, and then a few others. So it looks like nobody else is in insurance. So we'll go ahead and end this, and then we'll move on to Van's presentation. So here's the results. Then we'll let Van share her screen and we'll be able to move on with this presentation, and then we'll save all the questions for the end. If anyone has any questions, we'll do a little Q&A at the end and we'll wrap it up. So without further ado, I'd like to present to you Van Gordon from Farmers Insurance, who's going to enlighten us all on commercial insurance.
Thank you so much, Justin. Good morning, everybody. My name is Van Gordon. I'm with Farmers Insurance. I was introduced to CCIM by Mindy Leung. Thank you, Mindy. And it is my utmost pleasure, and I'm humbled to present to you for the first time to SoCal CCIM the risk characteristic for commercial real estate. While I am neither an underwriter nor a claims adjuster, I'm here in the hope that I'm and will be your insurance partner in reminding and helping you to understand more, if not, just to keep constantly reminding everybody about what a good insurance profile would be when it comes to real estate for commercial, lesser risk, that's what we call it in insurance. So let's go through the main point for general, what underwriting will be looking for in general when it comes to an application for lesser risk. They're going to look for management profile. The first test of quality for any risk is the management of the organization. Experience, stability, loss prevention attitude, and employee relations issues can be all indicators of how well management functions. They will be looking for loss prevention attitude, on-site management, occupancy rate, which is the percentage of building area leased, stability and continuity employee turnover, hiring practices, and training. Super important. Training is always one of the factors that they're looking for. The second main point for general underwriting we're looking for is safety programs. Safety. Management support, self-inspection, accident investigation, supervisor accountability. So let me switch to the general that I want to talk about in depth. Let me do the escape. So please bear with me. I might need to switch back and forth between the two screens so that I can share with you in more detail. So as I mentioned, the management profile, right? What are they looking for? From scale from 1, which is a serious problem, to 5, which is excellent quality, right? Loss prevention attitude. They're looking for the significantly exceed industry safety standards, signed safety policies, and if you have any budget for active support for subordinate managers. So those are the indicators of good prevention attitude in a management company. Is there any on-site management? So often than not, when I see my property manager showing up at our plaza, yet it's not, the best location, not the safest location. However, whenever I see my property manager on site, it just makes me feel safer. So the same thing for underwriting. When they know that there are good on-site management, that's a good indicator of a safer location that they can review and approve for that application or renewal. Okay, so highly selective tenant screening, right? Not just on-site, but prior to accepting any tenant, what do you do in order to accept that tenant? Everybody also know that occupancy rate is super important in commercial property, right? They're always looking for more occupancy, 100% if possible. Stability and continuity, well-managed growth with same management team for over 10 years versus constantly changing the management team. What about employee turnover? They were looking for a low turnover for the industry. They will also be looking for the hiring practices. Is there any pre-employment physicals, any drug testing, things like that, that tells them that's a good team to be managing that property. And training, again, training is super important. If there's any formal training in place, operation of the equipment involved, its design and safety, job family progression system. Okay. Now, second thing in general, which is the main factor is safety. Like I said, safety. Is there any management support from scale from 1 to 5? 1 is being none, 0. Management support. 2, visible, participate in meetings, active in inspection. Again, like I said, any time that I see my property manager there, it just feels good. Second thing is any self-inspection, formal inspection with documented follow-ups, management accountability. Accident investigation, any formal inspectors. In the past, I did have a couple of claims from my lesser risk client. And what happened is a truck that it just hit into their wall. And they actually did send an inspector, their own inspector down and do their due diligence and see what happened there. Is there any damage? Why there's such damage? So that's very good indication for from the insurance perspective. And guess what? That account actually, even after the incident, it was renewed with no problem. Supervisor accountability. Is there any safety bonus involved in training, self-inspection, or expeditions in all areas? All right, so we talked about general. Now, what about general liability? The second thing underwriting will be looking for is general liability. In insurance, we all know that general liability or liability by itself means a lot. So they were looking for location. Is there any exposure to the adjacent occupancies? If it is closer to habitational or high valued buildings, that means, you know, there could be some potential risk. If anything were to happen, would it translate to our neighbors? The second thing about general liability is exterior exposures, about sidewalk, parking lots, exterior lighting, traffic patterns, lots and docks, groundkeeping, snow and ice removal, trash disposal, attractive nuisance, docks, and trash. I will be talking more in detail about those things. The second point for general liability is equipment, furnishings, and fixtures, escalators, elevator, furniture, fixtures, maintenance, electrical system, glass, vandalism. What else about general liability? Life safety, it matters. Fire protection, smoke detectors, alarms, exits, emergency lighting, and evacuation plan. What else? General liability, it's personal or advertising injury, anything that is verbal about wrongful detention, arrest, exposure, or advertising exposures. This is also important, and many times over, it got overseen. Next in general liability is contractual liability exposures. I put stars here because it's super important. And again, I will go over this in detail and we'll share with you a couple of examples. It's going to be the floor space lessors, lease arrangement, other contractual agreement. You know, if you have any subcontractors, pest control, construction, repair, and whatnot. Sponsor activities, types of activities, controls, contractual exposure. General liability also comes with recreational exposures. What types, the conditions of that, the ownership, the lease arrangements, and all that good stuff. So with that, let me go back to general liability and share with you our scale from 1 to 5 again. Okay, general liability. We talk about the adjacent for location, right? We want to make sure that is that the best is no proximate adjacent occupancies, meaning it's just the commercial property by itself. Exterior exposure, we're talking about sidewalks, parking lots. No parking lot exposure would be the best, and minimal sidewalk exposure. Exterior lighting timer activated. There's always lighting is ideal for the account. What about traffic patterns, lots and docks? If there is a truck traffic pattern, uncontrolled loading, locked area surrounding the building. Obviously, that's not good. Versus the above average, plus separate shipping and receiving areas. What about groundkeeping, snow and ice removal? Well, here in Southern California, I guess we don't have to worry about that, but still it's a good reminder for everybody who's in the business and maybe doing business outside of the state where there's snow and whatnot. Trash disposal should be separate, should be well kept and separate with wall and whatnot. What about attractive nuisance? If you look here in the middle, a standard, they're looking for on-site management, discourages skateboarding, auto racing, juvenile group congregating. More than once when I saw this kind of sign, I was laughing to myself. At the same time, I believe that, this property management company, they're doing the right thing by putting the sign up there. You probably seen that all over, right? And to me, this is a really, really good practice when the property management company put that sign up. So I just want to bring that up. If you see the where my mouse is the standard, so when the underwriting are going out and do inspection, well, they probably have the third party doing that. But when they see that kind of sign, it just good and gives you extra discount. Dock and trash, obviously, they're looking for public effectively prevented from dock and trash storage area. What about equipment, furnishing, fixtures? Here in Southern California, I guess we don't have a lot of high-rise buildings that we need to worry about the escalators and elevator. Obviously, no escalators or elevators is better, right? Furniture, fixture maintenance. They're gonna look for regularly scheduled maintenance and inspection program with good record keeping. I want to focus on the good record keeping. More than once, I got asked by the inspector or underwriter that, do you have any documentation, any proof? Okay, so if there's any maintenance that just happened, especially in the past, recently, please make sure you keep that, or your client to keep that, and when needed, show it to them, to underwriting. What about electrical system? What about glass? What about vandalism? Well, obviously, vandalism has recently been an issue. To many of my clients, I mean, you cannot have control over that. However, if things like that happen, make sure that you talk to underwriter, you communicate, you have a police report in place, all right, and communicate with your insurance agent of what happened, so that you can show them that you have due diligence and try to prevent that from happening in the future. What about life safety? Life safety, we're talking about fire protection, smoke detectors, alarm. So obviously, we all know that building that is fully sprinklered in public area system to all floor, and again, documented inspections so that you can show to underwriter when comes a renewal. Here we have the maintenance in place, and it's regular and it's active. What about exits? Make sure that all the exit signs are visible, exit code for numbers and type of usable exit, well-lit exits. Emergency lighting, same thing, full emergency lighting throughout premises, backup generator. Make sure that if anything were to happen to the electrical system, you have a backup generator, especially in the big building. And again, documented testing. What about evacuation plan? They like to see any plan posted and drill staged, okay, regularly. Personal and advertising injury. like I said, this thing many times over got overseen. It is important that we have a good advertising program in place. If it can be done outside by a third party is better. What about contractual liability exposure? We all know that, when it comes to certificate of insurance, if you have any tenant that is going to occupy that space, you need the lease agreement, right? And better than not, we want the signed agreement, hold harmless agreement running in favor of insured obtained, all right? And make sure you have that on the endorsement, not just the certificate of insurance. Make sure that our landlord are fully protected with lease contain no waiver of subrogation. Now, this could be tricky. It could be very tricky because oftentimes I see that they will ask for the waiver of subrogation. But let me show you one example. Can you see this sample of insurance, certificate of insurance here, Justin? Okay, good. So at the bottom here, right, you can see, well, I'm sure many of you have seen this before. This is the certificate holder, right? And or additional insurer. And this company is obviously the property management company, and they have the insured or the tenant or the contractor add this clause into the certificate of insurance. And this is important when comes, the time when they work on your site, on the premise. Now, what about other contractual agreement? Very often we see the pest control, the construction company, the repair, the handyman and whatnot. They're going to be on the site to do some work. It is important that you make sure that they have their own insurance policy, general liability, right? And make sure that they adding you or the landlord as the additional insurer on all subcontractor policies. All right, not only that they should have an active policy in place for their business, for their practice, but also to put the property management or the landlord as the additional insured. Now, often than not, shopping center have become a community center in many areas, right? So you want to make sure that what type of activities are going to be there. Obviously, none is preferred, right? So no risk exposure there. However, if there's any, make sure you know what type, if it's going to be sponsored, right? And you have the controls over it. You have the adequate supervised setup and post setup reviewed by the management. And if there's any contractors, any contractual exposure there, then make sure the center is named as additional insurer on exhibitor's policy. So I really want to focus on this one and remind everybody that the certificate of insurance and putting the additional insurer with proper endorsement is super important when it comes to contractual exposure. Very similar to recreational exposure. If there's any children activity involved being placed on the premise, we want to know what type, the condition, if it's going to be well maintained facility, regularly serviced and inspected and whatnot. And again, it's the ownership, the lease arrangement. Okay, so make sure that you will always be reminded of those things. Next thing, how am I doing on time, Justin?
Oh, you're fine. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now we went over the general liability. Next thing is the property itself. Well, fire, right? We all know that fire is a bigger risk in any lesser risk. The fire exposure, including the fuel loading, storage facility, you consider arrangement, location, ions, etc. Interior exposures, consider the type of occupancy, separation and likelihood of fire. Exterior exposure, consider the occupancy, distance, prevailing wind direction, and likelihood of spread. Again, I will switch over to the other grid so that I can go in detail. When it comes to property, we also want to make sure that the common hazard is under control. Common hazards can represent significant loss exposures if not properly installed, maintained, and utilized. So keep in mind the electrical system, heating and cooling system, as well as housekeeping. Inspection and maintenance, again, play a crucial role that will give you more credit to the underwriting team. If it's going to be a full-time staff, subcontractors, or tenants, right? Who is going to maintain the facility? Is it going to be in-house or is it going to be a third party? So probably also include the, the other causes of loss, which is what? Windstorm, hail, which, luckily we don't have that much in California, except for, if I'm not wrong, about a month ago, we did have a little hail here in Orange County. What about collapse? Consider design, the height, the roof structure, roof type, water damage. Consider condition of plumbing, water processes, and storage practices, vehicles, aircraft. And one thing I want to remind you as well is the mold. Okay, so mold has nothing to do with fire, but it just occurred to me that as a property management or being a commercial real estate advisor to your client, make sure you remind them of the mold. If old mold, new mold, whatever, if there's any inspection for the mold, please make sure you do all that. Properties also include the private protection on premise, any alarm systems, watchmen, fire detection system, neighborhood center, extinguishers. And we all know sprinkler system is crucial. Is it well maintained, functional, that can be best defense against a major loss from fire? Areas to consider include design, water supply, extent of the system. Is it just local area or is throughout the whole building? Maintenance and condition of the system and components. Is there any alarm provision, service contract? Again, when it comes to the maintenance, the contractual exposure, make sure you have all the documentation in place for the recent service. So when comes the renewal time, you give it to the underwriting. What about special hazards? So it could be created by the operation and process being conducted by the insured or their tenants, can become a significant loss cause. They include chemical storage, commercial cooking, flammable or combustible liquid storage, flammable or combustible liquid handling, transfer, and mixing. Is there any industrial trucks, lift trucks, refrigeration compressors, spray painting, welding, and all that? So let me go back to the property real quick before I went to my last slide. So property, we talked about fire exposure, right? If you look to this, to the far right, excellent quality, which is number 5 in our scale from 1 to 5, right? What they're looking for is low hazard, multiple fire division surrounding the property. The more the merrier, right? So that you are better protected in the event there's a fire. They're gonna come and help you. Exterior exposure. So you will need to make sure that if there's any exposure to other things like wind direction and all that. Luckily, again, in Southern California, we might not have to worry about that for now. But if there's anything, make sure that you do your due diligence and help your client out and prevent all that before bad things happen. Common hazard. What they're looking for is there any shared concealed space, right? They're gonna look for continual cleanup. They're gonna look for sprinkler, right? That is not in a concealed space. For electrical, if there's any new wiring, if there's any reason revamping or renovation of the place, make sure that you have the documentation and show them. Heating, cooling, is there any new system, or better yet, no, right? Because those could be potential hazard. It's hard, I understand. So again, if there's any new system, make sure it's properly maintained, well serviced. Smoking. Recently, we have some tenants or customers that is asking about this. So if you are in the a building that is allow for loose enforcement, then I guess if there's nothing you can do about it, that's fine. But if there's any designated smoking or no smoking area, that would be the best. For other causes of loss, what I want to talk about is the water damage. So water damage has always been not only for commercial, but as well as residential. Make sure that all the plumbing system, the water processes and stock storage are all well maintained and properly serviced as well. If there's any prior losses, make sure that it is properly repaired and again well documented so that you can show to the insurance underwriting. Because the water damage not only has any potential damage to the structure, but it has something to do with mold, right? So you never know if the mold is there. So again, make sure mold is being addressed if there's any, and any potential cause that could cause it, please keep an eye on that and make sure it's properly addressed. Private protection on premises, obviously alarm system, watchman, extinguishers. I want to remind you about the extinguishers. Recently, I have customers who are going to renew the property, right? And the underwriter keep asking for, hey, is there any reason most updated dated stamps on the extinguishers? So make sure not only that there's a formal program to train our employees in proper use of the extinguishers, but please make sure that they are properly maintained and well serviced, so that when they see the pictures, or even they could come in person and check that you have that on file. Again, everybody knows about the sprinkler system. Sprinkler system is crucial when it comes to underwriting credit. They will give you full credit discount, if you will, if there is a good sprinkler system that works and well maintained with dated stamps and whatnot. And if it is fully extended to the whole building, all right? And alarm system, they're gonna look for a supervised central station versus a no alarm system. Obviously, it is very desirable, right? If you have one versus none. And service contract, everything should be annually tested, if not more often, quarterly, monthly, okay, and properly documented. In this section, they're talking about, for the property, the special hazard. Obviously, you know better than I do when it comes to chemical storage, commercial cooking, if there's any in the plaza, right? Things like that should be properly controlled and inspected, so that we can minimize the risk of not just fire, but any other liability as well. All right, so we come to the very last slide, which is crime. What is it? Well, obviously, many opportunities for crime prevention exist through the physical arrangement of the premises. These opportunities include stock arrangement, lighting, physical protection other than alarm system, and stock handling procedure, including alarm, lighting, physical protection, and hours of operation. So what they mean here is basically, if the property is, again, being monitored, right? If there's any UL listed, supervised central station, lighting, proper lighting is very important, both exterior and interior lighting. What about physical protection? They will be looking for a physical protection of premises and stock is significantly greater than you would expect for the exposure involved. Okay, our operation, everybody knows, 24 hours around the clock, is probably not good, versus just 7:30 to 5 p.m. and no overnight, things like that. So that's it. I mean, I'm here again to remind everybody of all this. And if you have any additional question or any input for me, I'll be more than happy to listen. And that concludes my presentation for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Van. That was super informative. So let's go ahead and open it up to questions. If anyone has a question for Van, you can go ahead and either click the reactions button and raise your hand, or you can type it in the chat and I can either unmute you and you can ask her directly, or you can type it in the chat and I can ask Van your question. I'm also going to share in the chat Van's contact info. So if you guys have any questions or need anything, you can reach out to Van directly. So you should get it right now. I have a question, Van.
Sure.
So you, in your risk, you had listed kind of 1 through 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. And the thing that kind of sparked my interest was the occupancy rate. So you put 75% occupancy being the worst, 100% as the best. Obviously, as a broker who does a lot of leasing, I strive to keep everything at 100%, but in reality, that's not always the case. Sometimes you have a large tenant move out. There's some time in between before you can get a new tenant in there. Sometimes it's a single occupancy building and the tenant vacates. What does that look like if the building is under 75% in terms of maybe underwriting, or even what that looks like in terms of your premium?
Great question, Justin. So if the building is being under occupied, if you will, then make sure you have a good reason why it's being under occupied, right? Why is that? Because maybe the previous tenant just moved out, you're waiting to sign the lease contract with the next one. Obviously, because of COVID, there are many unoccupied office spaces, right? So, and if it is very, very low in occupancy, then we have a program to place that risk properly until it's more it's fully occupied or have more tenants. Does that answer your
what
question?
does the premiums look like on that temporary program? Is it substantially higher than your standard premiums?
Not always, not
Okay.
always. Yeah, it depends on the risk, who's going to be your tenant and how long it's gonna be. So obviously most insurance companies, they prefer to have a fully occupied or more occupied office space or commercial building. But if for whatever reason, recently I even have some that is going to be through the renovation. No problem. We can place it not in a vacant program, and I don't think that and it should not be the case that you're paying more. If anything, it's more of a liability. Yes.
Okay, great. That's valuable. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? No? All right. Well, thank you so much, Van. I appreciate you being such a valuable part of our chapter and giving this presentation. It's really nice to have a resource like you in our chapter. I know, as more and more of these REITs are taking over the real estate, hear that some of the requirements for insurance are just through the roof. And sometimes we have questions. What is this hired and non-owned auto policy that's required? So Van's here. She's a great resource. If you guys have any questions or need anything, definitely feel free to reach out to her. And then lastly, I just want to let everyone know about another workshop that we have coming up. So Gene Trowbridge, who is one of our chapter founders, he does a ton of syndication work, which kind of the buzzword now is crowdfunding. And he's giving an amazing workshop, which is next month. It's a 2-day workshop. It's virtual. So it's just an hour and a half a day. It's April 28th and 29th, a Thursday, Friday. So if you guys would like to sign up, you're welcome to sign up. It should be a great presentation. So without further ado, I'll let everybody get going, but thank you, Van, and thank you everyone for participating. Hope everyone has a great rest of the week and enjoys the weekend.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.